Hello and welcome back. As you can see, we are here at some trains. I was challenged by Melbourne's Decay on Instagram. He was posting about these carriages and I gave him a bit of a history spiel about what they were and where they came from and, you know, when they were in service, all that sort of stuff. And he challenged me to go and find them. That conversation was yesterday, and as soon as he challenged me, I found them in like 2 minutes, and they happened to be on my way home from my epic journey of discovery, and so, yep, I found them. $4:35 and 4:33 It's pretty cool. Avexes have come here for a while now. It's quite a nice area. There you go, that's a little walk by. Well, I'll start the main tour of the Taits, I guess. You can see, oh god, there's freaking barbed wire there and I didn't realise it. Just jabbed myself. Anyway, you can just see there that there's steps, and that would be so that you could get onto the roof, like the driver or something could get onto the roof and fix any problems. Whoop, almost slipped on a rock. It's very decayed. I'll go to the front one, which is 4:35 and we'll start our tour inside there. Just a little note, most people know the red Rattlers in their just red, all over red livery, but I'm pretty sure that these ones, at least in preservation, quote-unquote preservation here, were painted in the darker red with the moonstone grey windows. Yeah. Well, here is inside the Tait through one of the windows. You can see all the leather seats and the no smoking sign up there. Lots of spider webs and decay. It's Melbourne's Decay. And somebody's written on the seat over there 4:35 which is the carriage number for this Tait. And, yep, we can't get through this door because it's just jammed. So let's peek through this other window. Oh yeah, I should mention that these carriages were the first to really feature a passageway through the middle of the carriage. I know it's, commonplace now, but previously there used to just be compartments without a passageway. So like this wall here would be solid, and there'd be a wall between sort of those seats there. And so there'd be doors on either side of the carriage, obviously, for each row of seats, and there is still with Taits, I should say, but yeah, not anymore. That all changed with the next generation of trains called the Harris, where there was only 2 or 3 doors per side. But yeah, you'll also notice that there's no way to travel between carriages. That hadn't really come about yet, and again was an innovation of the next generation of trains called the Harris, otherwise known in Melbourne as the Blue trains. And in here, I can't really go in, but it's a sneak preview of the drivers and guards compartment. The driver's compartment is just there, and this right here is a seat for the guard, and that handle is a handbrake for the train. All trains in Melbourne used to have guards, which were sort of like conductors, but they weren't so much for checking tickets and more so for the safe working of the train. And guards were abolished sometime in the 80s, I believe, or maybe the 90s. Have to check. And I'll put up a date. If any of you watch Panda Explores, his dad was a suburban guard, and so he was quite annoyed when Melbourne abolished guards. I don't know if you can read that little sign up there, but it says danger interference with any something dangerous, something. I don't know. I'll put a thing up. In fact, and then there, you can probably read it. I can't quite read it from here. Oh well. You can also see 435M up there, which is the carriage number, obviously. You can just see how freaking decayed it is. It's cool. Oh yes, you can see here, in this thing, is a globe. That was the headlight. It's just a standard globe. And then there was this thing as well. And this is I think this is a destination disc. Or is it a tail disc? I can't tell. Probably looks like it looks more of a tail disc to me. In fact, yeah, it would have been, because destination discs were abolished by the time these things were scrapped. Destination discs were so that a guy in a signal box could sort of see the destination of a train when it was a bit further away, so he couldn't read the destination board like a normal person on a station would, but could see the destination disc, and it was just like a different pattern. Whereas tail discs, which is what I think this is, they were just to indicate that that's the end of the train. Today we have red lights to indicate that that's the back of the train, but back then they had tail discs. And it was if you didn't see the tail disc and you were a signaller, then you had to let the train know, because it might have meant that the train had separated, or it could mean that they've forgotten to put the tail disc up. But it could mean that, yeah, the train is split, and that's not a good thing, obviously. Well, you can see lots of hay and stuff, and just more decay. That rhymes. It was a real innovation to have a completely walk-through carriage back in the 1910s and 1920s. Warning, do not stand in doorway or lean against door. That was because these doors could all be opened at any time, even when the train was moving. Today, all trains have automatically closing doors, at least in Victoria. I think pretty much everywhere in Australia as well, apart from heritage trains, they're the exception, but that's a different story. Regular trains, in the past, you could open the doors, and you could open all the windows as well. And these trains had no air conditioning or heating. So in the summertime, it was great to be able to open up the doors and get some fresh air. And you'd occasionally lean out the doors, even though the sign says to not do it. And yeah, in wintertime, somebody would get out the train and it was cold. They'd open the door and they wouldn't close it, and you'd get a freezing cold wind coming through. So thank God for air conditioning, and thank God for closing doors, I guess, although it'd be nice to open some up every now and then. And it'd be nice to have some openable windows on trains again. Oh well, the last of the trains with openable, manually opening doors were changed. They were in V-line, manual opening and closing, I should say. They're in V-line, and they were, not too long ago, they were converted to have automatically closing doors. But the last of the trains with opening windows retired in Melbourne in 2014. They were the beloved Hitachis. In these window frames here, or should I say picture frames, there used to be pictures, and they used to advertise various places around the state that you could visit by the railways. And it looks like we can very easily get into the guards compartment, so let's do that. Whoa. You can see, oh god, on the door it says guard. Danger, interference with any equipment inside this compartment is dangerous to life. Offenders will be rigorously prosecuted. Well then, better not interfere with anything. There is also this bell code which the guard could use to communicate with the driver and the reverse. You can see just how rusted the floor is and decayed. I'm not going to open that door, but you can see this was the driver's compartment, and probably looks bigger than it is on camera. It's like a metre wide, if that. And probably, I don't know, 70 centimetres deep. Not very big at all. You can see up there. And down. That was the simple controls. The accelerator on the right and the brake on the left. Or should I say, the air brake on the left. You could brake rheostatically, which means that you're essentially turning the motors into generators and feeding the electricity back into the grid. Or you could use the air brakes. Usually you'd use a combination of them. And yep, that's the little driver's seat there. Just imagine sitting in this little compartment all day. It's let's just say conditions are rather different today. You can also just sort of barely see up there, but that's where that sort of window up there is where the destination board used to go, and there was like a little thing which you turned to change the destination. Obviously it was paper and not electronic like all of today's destination boards. But yeah, there you go. I'm not sure what that red lever does. It's obviously a valve of some sort. But is it for the air brakes or something? I'm not sure. If you know, I would love to know. There's a little cubbyhole window here to look through to the other side. I think that might be a one-way mirror. I would have to check though. Another thing you'll notice is that the guards compartment door is significantly wider than the rest of the passenger doors. So if you were in a wheelchair or a pram, then the only way that you could travel on one of these trains was to come and ride with the guard in the guards compartment, which, if you're a railway fan, is not a bad thing at all. But if you're just a regular person, then you might feel a bit isolated from the rest of the train. The reason that the guard sat so high is that so that the guard could look out the windows there and could check on the train as it was moving. Also notice that this door here is a sliding door, so it could close and the driver could sit down and have a back to lean on. The what do you call it? the gauge that you can see up there, that is for the air brake, showing the amount of air pressure that you've got. And despite what you might think, air brakes work the opposite to sort of what you'd think. So you don't apply air pressure to activate the brakes. You actually apply air pressure to release the brakes, and you let out air pressure to put on the brakes. It used to be the other way around, where you would apply air to release the brakes. But then they had a few accidents with runaway trains, and so the theory, when the air was disconnected, they had a few runaway trains. So they changed it so that you'd use air to release the brakes, and the theory being if you lost air pressure, it means that you don't lose your brakes. You actually apply your brakes, if that makes sense. So yeah, that little lever there is for the horn. Up there you can also see the markings that are, one says 13 amp one says 3 amp comp dyno, and the other says 15 amp, and another one says 400 amps. So I'm not sure what that means. I'll look it up, and if I can't find it, then you won't see any text. If I can find it, there you go, there's the text saying what it is. Another innovation of these carriages was the sliding doors. Up until these carriages, all other carriages had swinging doors, because, every other door that you see is a swinging door. And there were actually... every other door that you see in your everyday life, well, most of them are swinging doors. They swing outwards and not sliding. But yeah, these ones pioneered the sliding doors, which are now common on pretty much all trains today. Another thing is that there was actually, people sometimes get confused, but there was another type of sort of red Rattler, if you like, colloquially known as the dog box, or just doggies, because they had the swinging doors and the partitioned compartments, unlike these ones which have got the sort of passageway all the way through. In fact, back in the days before these were electric carriages, they were coded P-type carriages for passageway. At least that's the theory. And the passageway carriages that were steam-hauled, so these carriages, the Taits, were always designed to be electrified, but they weren't initially because the electrification hadn't begun. So they ran as steam-hauled carriages for a little while, whereas the dog box carriages were originally and always meant to be steam-hauled carriages, but were then converted to electric. And the swing doors, or dog boxes, they ran until like the 1970s, and then these Taits were retired in the 1980s, 1984 to be exact. Was the last one. Also, the name Tait, where does it come from? Well, they were named after Sir Thomas Tait, who was the commissioner of the Victorian railways during the dates that I show on screen. And when they were first in service, because Thomas Tait was the pioneer of electrification in Melbourne, and so they weren't initially known as, they were just known as P-type carriages, not Taits, or they were known as sliding doors. They weren't named Taits until later, obviously after Thomas Tait retired from Chairman of Commissioners. But there you go, there's a fun fact. You also notice the smoking and no smoking. Originally, these carriages were partitioned into smoking and non-smoking compartments because back in the day it was very common to smoke on trains, but not everyone liked to smoke, and so that's why there was the partitions. Also, back in the day, originally, they came in first and second class partitions. I believe the motors were second class and the trailers were first class. I'll put up a correction if that's wrong. But yeah, you could get a first class suburban train ticket. You can get first class country tickets still today, but first class in suburbia was abolished in the 1950s. So I'm here in one of the other carriages, and midway through here you can sort of see how there's a bench seat that goes all the way across the carriage and a partition, and it's midway through the carriage. This was originally to separate the smoking and non-smoking parts of the train, but it just sort of remained like that for years, even when smoking was banned on suburban services. Those little things on the roof, they're for the air vents, because there was no real air circulation in them unless you opened the doors or windows. Well, you know what? Let's try climbing this, because there's a handlebar to get on the roof. Alright, well this is as far as I'm going to go for fear of the roof collapsing in on me. I don't want to damage the carriages either. But yeah, you can see down there, down the carriage, at the very end, sort of nearest to the driver's and guard's compartment, that's where the pantograph would have gone to collect the power to run the motors. So there you go. You can just sort of see the mounts for where the pantograph would have gone that's still there today. When these carriages were moved here, they were stripped of any sort of semi-usable parts before being sold off. That's what happened to a lot of the Taits, and the ones that weren't sold were burned, literally burnt in a field. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little visit to the Taits, and it's getting quite bright. Time for me to head off. Hope you enjoyed that, and I don't know, see you next time.